Good morning, it's Monday, the 27th of April. I'm Maret Gwyn, and you're watching Europe Today, your daily dose of morning news and analysis live here on Euronews. Coming up today, the US's acting Attorney General says President Donald Trump and his officials were likely the target of the shooting during Correspondents' Dinner in Washington on Saturday night. The suspect has been named as 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen. And Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi is headed to Moscow for talks with President Putin, amid uncertainty over the future of negotiations between Iran and the US. Meanwhile, Hezbollah and Israel are accusing each other of violating the ceasefire in Lebanon. We speak to Lebanon's Minister for Tech, AI and Displaced Persons, Dr. Kamal Shahadi. Also, Hungary's Prime Minister-elect Peter Magyar is headed to Brussels on Wednesday for talks on unlocking billions of euros in EU funds, saying there's, quote, no time to waste. Magyar is also expected to review Hungary's plans to tap into cheap EU defence loans, plans submitted by the outgoing government over corruption concerns. But we start this morning with the latest from Washington. The White House says that the suspected gunman who charged past security during a press dinner on Saturday night was targeting Trump administration officials. This is what Trump had to say after the incident.
This is not the first time in the past couple of years that our republic has been attacked by a would-be assassin who sought to kill. They seem to think he was a lone wolf. The people that do the most, the people that make the biggest impact, they're the ones that they go after. They don't go after the ones that don't do much because they like it that way.
For more, our US expert Stefan Grobe joins me in the studio. Good morning, Stefan.
Good morning, Marit.
Great to have you. Listen, these were dramatic scenes on Saturday evening. By now, what do we know about the gunman and also about his motives?
Well, first of all, the suspected gunman, a teacher from California, will be arraigned today, which means he will appear in court. As for his motives, as you indicated, he wanted to shoot officials of the Trump administration and Trump himself. That is, according to investigators who combed through his messages. And the White House Correspondents' Dinner would have been the perfect location to do that. This is the most important social event on Washington's political calendar, bringing together top politicians, cabinet members, of course, the president himself and the media, a sort of celebrity roast where both sides playfully poke fun at each other and also, and that's very important, praise the work of the free press. And here's the thing. Donald Trump doesn't like the work of the free press. He doesn't like the freedom of the press. Remember when he said that the press is the enemy of the people during his first term. And it was the very first time that he participated in this Washington institution. And today he routinely insults reporters because he doesn't like the questions they're asking, especially female reporters. He has sued media organizations because he didn't like what they were publishing, broadcasting, or writing. And even after Saturday's incident, he accused journalists of being biased and being, and I quote, almost one and the same with the Democratic Party. And he accused them of being weak on crime. Now, because of Trump's fraught relationship with the press, this White House Correspondents' Dinner was supposed to be almost like a new beginning. Marit.
And Stefan, today we have King Charles, Queen Camilla of the UK going on a state visit to the US.
Right.
Can we expect any changes in terms of security given what happened over the weekend?
Well, there is already maximum security in place. I guess there will be more vigilant. This is the first time Charles will visit the United States as king, and it's the first British monarch to visit the US since the Queen accepted an invitation by President George W. Bush in 2007. That's 9 years ago. Officially, the visit will mark the 250th anniversary of America later this year. There will be a state dinner. There will be an address by the king before both houses of Congress. Now, historically, both countries enjoy a special relationship that has become very complicated recently. First of all, the king himself is a very strong advocate of climate policy, something that Donald Trump considers a hoax, and that he's now rolling back dramatically, then the Trump administration and the Labour government of Keir Starmer are not on good terms. There has been a very public dispute over the Iran war, over NATO, and even over the Epstein files. Remember, the king's brother, Andrew, fell into disgrace after it came out that he was on very close terms with Jeffrey Epstein. And Starmer, had faced calls to resign because he had appointed Peter Mandelson, the ambassador to the US, also a close friend.
So plenty of points of tensions there, Stefan. We will, of course, be keeping an eye out for that visit during the day, but thank you for that update. Now, a Pentagon memo which leaked last week suggested ways in which the US might punish its allies for failing to aid its war on Iran. It included proposals to suspend Spain from NATO after the government in Madrid denied US use of its bases to attack Iran. But is suspending a NATO member even possible? Our Jakob Janis has been taking a look.
Last week, a leaked Pentagon email left officials in Brussels and Madrid ruffled. It revealed a list of punitive options for allies who refused to assist in the Iran war. And the most shocking proposal? Attempting to suspend Spain from NATO. But wait a second, is that even possible? Spain has been Europe's most vocal voice against the war, denying refueling and overflight rights at the Rota and Moron bases for strikes against Iran. And while Washington calls this the absolute baseline for the alliance, Madrid maintains these bases cannot be used for actions outside the NATO treaty. However, despite the threats, the US cannot simply evict a member. You see, the founding charter provides no mechanism for suspension, and its Article 13 only allows for voluntary withdrawal. And experts point out that Spain is well within its rights to protect its sovereignty. But it's worth noting that this is not the first time this has happened. In the 1980s, both Spain and France closed their air bases to the US during operations against Libya. And this is where it gets even more interesting. The leak suggests the retaliation could extend well beyond Spain. The Pentagon is reportedly reviewing diplomatic support for the British control of the Falkland Islands, after the UK also denied US use of its Royal Air Force bases to attack Iran. And as it appears, US commitment to NATO is fading.
I'm very disappointed in NATO. They weren't there for us. We pay trillions of dollars for NATO, and they weren't there for us.
European nations are finally building their own foundations. Last Wednesday, Germany defense minister unveiled the country's first military strategy for Bundeswehr, aiming to build Europe's strongest conventional army by 2039. The document also acknowledges that with Washington focused on the Indo-Pacific, the European pillar must assume greater responsibility for its own defense. So, whether this leads to a stronger alliance or permanent divorce remains the defining question for NATO's annual summit this July.
Jakob Janis reporting there. Now, our next guest was formerly the Foreign Affairs Minister and Defence Minister of Ecuador and has also served as the President of the UN General Assembly. Maria Fernanda Espinosa is currently the President of the Cities Alliance, a UN initiative to reduce urban poverty and promote sustainable cities. And she joins me this morning in the studio. Really good to have you here with us in Brussels. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, your name is often mentioned as a potential successor to the UN Secretary-General, Antonio Guterres, but it is an institution that's facing a real historic challenge. Funding cuts hitting hard, but also the US President establishing a parallel institutions that some believe is an attempt to supplant the UN. Can the institution survive this crisis?
I would say that the world cannot live without the UN. So the UN will survive. The big question here is how the organization will survive. And I think that the shorthand for that is reform, transform, or die. No, and it's an organization that it's, as you mentioned very well, facing financial and liquidity crisis, but it's the symptom. The real problem is that the UN needs to reinvent itself because it was designed for a different reality, to face different challenges. And we live in a world that is extremely volatile, but has to face from climate shocks to massive displacement, international organized crime, more than 60 active armed conflicts around the world. So the budget cannot go down. It has to go up, but the organization needs to prioritize. There are many efforts ongoing, but I think that we really need to rethink the organization, to revitalize the organization, and to prioritize. Prioritized action has to come, of course, from member states. And there are ongoing processes like the UN 80 initiative, which is I would say it's a must initiative because it's a cost-cutting exercise.
You mentioned this shifting geopolitical landscape, that it's a new world. Where do you see Europe's role in this new world? Some would say it's losing its diplomatic clout. Would you agree?
I think Europe has a vital role to play in the whole multilateral architecture as a bridge builder, as a principled multilateralist. It has had an important role. It has to continue having an important role as well in leading with the financial crisis, but also in looking at the future and what are the issues where the UN is best at. There are challenges in today's world that cannot be replaced by another organization. Let's only think about the 190 million people that are served by the UN through the humanitarian deployment infrastructure. The UN cannot be replaced on that front, but it can work in a more networked, more collaborative way with regional organizations, with cities, with other actors that are out there that did not exist 80 years ago.
And you mentioned cities, and I want to ask you, because you're here in Brussels for the Cities Alliance Assembly, and specifically to talk about how the geopolitical context, the fraught geopolitical context, is playing out in cities. Tell us more about that.
If you look at conflict, if you look at climate shocks, if you look at displacement, if you look at poverty, the microcosms where you can all see happen real time, it's in cities. If you look at the current conflicts right now, either Lebanon or Ukraine or Sudan, you see that where crisis hit the most, especially in conflict situations, is urban settings. And yet investments are low and are not enough to serve the needs of people in urban areas. 1 billion people living in slums and extreme poverty. This is not a world that we want to live in. There is a responsibility there. There is an investment responsibility. There is a policy responsibility. I think the UN is well placed, but local governments, organizations like the Cities Alliance that has an incredible track record in working on urban poverty.
Okay. Maria Fernanda Espinosa, that's all we have time for, I'm afraid. But thank you so much for joining us this morning in the studio. It's been great to have you.
Thank you.
Now we're going to the Middle East next, where uncertainty surrounds the future of negotiations between the US and Iran. For more, we can cross over to Doha and to our correspondent, Laila Humaira, who is standing by there for us. Laila, great to see you again. Listen, no imminent plans for US-Iran talks, and the Iranian foreign minister has just landed in Moscow, I believe.
That's right, Mara. Good morning to you as well. We know that the latest is that Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has arrived in St. Petersburg, Russia, where he's expected to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, Araghchi has called it a good opportunity to discuss with the Russian president the situation, the ongoing conflict, but it also signals Russia's continued stake in the region and also influence on Iran. Now, Russia is Araghchi's third stop after Oman and Pakistan over the weekend. In Islamabad, where interestingly he made 2 visits, Arachi had presented the Pakistani mediators with a working plan. Now, it is interesting to note that it was after US President Donald Trump had cancelled a planned visit of his own envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, that Trump said that the Iranians submitted a better proposal than what he had seen before. Now, in Oman, Arachi met with the Sultan of Oman, and a big topic of discussion there was to create a safe passage in the Strait of Hormuz. Now, of course, all of this is happening at a time when there is still an impasse and a standoff in the critical maritime shipping trade route, where ships and vessels have found themselves essentially under what you can call a double blockade, Iran shutting down the strait again, and the US enforcing a naval blockade. Now, with that naval blockade, the US said that it has diverted nearly 40 vessels that were headed to Iranian ports. That's the latest we have for you, Marit.
Okay, Laila in Doha, thank you so much for that live update. Now, we're staying in the Middle East. Lebanon's health ministry has said that Israeli strikes killed 14 people on Sunday, making it the deadliest day since the ceasefire between Hezbollah and Israel began. We're joined now by Lebanon's Minister for Displaced Persons, as well as Technology and AI, Dr. Kamal Shahadi. Minister, really good to have you with us this morning. Let me start with this. Israel and Hezbollah are continuing to exchange fire, both sides accusing each other of breaching the ceasefire. Would you say at this stage that this truce is holding?
Good morning. Look, the truce is not holding, but there are clear signs that both sides are making an effort not to escalate beyond the current level of violence, which is deplorable because, as you said, 14 people died yesterday from Israel bombing. Now, having said that, let's not forget that the ceasefire was imposed on both Israel and Hezbollah last week. Neither side wanted the ceasefire, and they both found a way to go back to the modus operandi of the pre-ceasefire announcement.
Okay, and Minister, on Israel first, I'll come to Hezbollah afterwards. Do you see signs that they might be demarcating a so-called yellow line in a similar way that they did in Gaza?
Look, the comparison between Lebanon and Gaza is simply outrageous. It's outrageous because we saw the destruction that happened in Gaza. It's outrageous because there is no political reasoning. There's no legal reason for that. The yellow line is something that unilaterally is being imposed on Lebanon, and we do not recognize it. We do not recognize a yellow line, nor a red line, nor a blue line. We have a border, and that needs to be demarcated. The border between Lebanon and Israel was almost demarcated in 2022-23. We were almost done with the demarcation. There were 13 outstanding points. 8 of them were resolved. There were 5 outstanding. And so I do not understand, nor do I accept the idea of a yellow line, and the government of Lebanon does not accept it. We do live in the reality today that by the sheer force of the military power of Israel, this yellow line has been imposed. Now, if the Israelis wanted assurances that Lebanon, the Lebanese side, would not be the source of attacks on the Israeli side, that is something that the Lebanese government is not only willing to discuss, but unilaterally, even before this most recent round of fighting started on March 2nd, the Lebanese government had taken on a commitment to strip Hezbollah of its weapons and to make sure that there are no hostilities crossing the border between Lebanon and Israel. We recognize that Israel and Lebanon want a border that is safe and secure.
And briefly, Minister, just to close, I do want to ask you about Hezbollah. You mentioned the importance of the group laying down its arms. What leverage do you have as a government right now to make sure that that happens?
I think the most important leverage we have is that there is a vast majority of the Lebanese who want this to happen, who want Hezbollah to surrender its weapons to the Lebanese armed forces. And that's very important. Second, the international community is supportive of Lebanon's intention to control all the weapons on Lebanese territory. Now, that's not enough, clearly. And so what we need to do is continue to put pressure on Hezbollah to get Hezbollah to accept and to relinquish its weapons because the weapons today are only going to bring more retaliation from Israel.
Okay. Thank you so much, Minister Shehadi. That's all we have time for, I'm afraid. But thank you so much for joining us here on Europe Today. And that brings our programme to an end. Thank you again for your company this morning. We'll be back tomorrow, Tuesday, with more news and analysis. See you then.